These are the materials that I used to draft the pattern for the crop top shirt. These are the measurements without ease. So the first step was to mark out the button band. So I used 2.5 inches. So I marked that out and squared that all the way down to the top length. The next step was to mark the neck measurement, that is the neck divided by 5, that's 3 inches right there. And the next step was to mark the armhole depth plus the slant, the armhole depth plus the slant. We're going to take out the slant measurement later. The next step was to mark out the top length, which is 18 inches or 17 inches. I used 18 inches and I squared that all the way out. After squaring out, the next step is to mark the back width measurement divided by 2, or you just mark out the shoulder measurement, whichever you prefer. So I did that. I marked that out on the armhole depth and connected the points. The next step was to mark out the neck width. I also did that on the neck length and connected the points. Now to create the curve, I went down 1 inch, the other side 1/2 inch, and in the center 1 inch, and connected the points to create the curve. The next step was to mark her bust, quarter of a bust measurement. I marked the slant measurement, which is 1.7 inches, and connected the slant point to the neckline. The next step is to get the midpoint of the armhole depth. This is a guideline to create the armhole curve. I went in 4/8. On the armhole depth line, I went up 1 inch. I created my curves using those points as a guide. The next step was to connect the bust point down to the top length. No need to shapen the waist. I also added 1.5 inch to the measurement. The 1/2 inch is for the sewing allowance, while the 1 inch in case if she ate too much cake and she wants ease. I recurved the armhole just like so. So I'm done drafting the front pattern. So I cut out the front pattern. I'm going to use the front pattern to get the back pattern by tracing the front pattern. So the next step is to trace the front pattern without the button band. Once I'm done tracing the pattern, so I marked 1 inch length for the neck and created the back neck curve. Why for the armhole, where the armhole depth and the length meet, I went up 1/2 inch and connected by curving. So this is basically all for the back, and I cut out a pattern. For drafting of the sleeve, I already have a video of making a block sleeve, so I'm gonna put a link on the screen and in the description box, because I feel like doing that here would take enough time. So it's just the same process. The only thing I did was to add more allowances because she wanted a free sleeve. So this is the fabric she prefers, the color and the thread. I also use the stay to thicken the collar and also the band. So I have placed the pattern paper on the fabric and ready to cut. So I have cut out the fabric. So the first step in sewing is to fold the band, the button band. I folded that into 2 to sum it up to 1 inch and sew close to the edge. So this is it also. The next step is to sew the shoulders together. I've done so, and to sew the sides also together. The next step was to sew in the 1 inch allowance. So I just folded it like so and sew it in case I need to loosen it for ease for her. So the next step was to hem the bottom just like so. The next step was to create the collar. I have a video where I think that's one of my first video on YouTube where I made a collar for my son's shirt. So I'm gonna put a link on the screen and in the description box. So pardon me because I yawned like 20 times because I had to wake up pretty early to record. So this is the collar. I've already done the collar. I used the stay to make it thick. So I'm gonna attach the collar to the shirt. So this is the collar already attached, just like so. I had to put a label. She wanted it so I did. So the next step was the sleeve. So I cut out 4 inches from the sleeve length, which I'm going to attach back as the band. So I cut a fabric and cut it to the size of 17 inches. That's for the length, which I divided into 4 inches because I'm going to fold it into 4 places to make it really thick. So her wrist length was 8 inches, just like so. So I cut the pieces into 4 inches width. This fabric wasn't folded and the length was 17 inches. That is for the sewing, including the sewing allowance, which is 1 inch. So cutting in fold, I measured 4 inches and added 1 inch as the sewing allowance for the width. I folded that into 2, like creating a bias tape to sum it up to 4 inches. This is just to make it really thick. It's just to make the band really thick. The next step was to get another fabric to create the bias for the lapping. So I cut out 2 inches and 3 inches to create 1 inch bias tape and 1/2 inch bias tape. So I have already marked out the points there, and I'm going to cut that out. If you're following, what you need to do is to cut out a tape in such a way that if you fold it, it will sum up to 1/2 inch, and the other one, if you fold it, it will sum up to 1 inch. So this one, for the 1 inch, I cut out 3 inches. I folded 1 inch, 1/2 inch to sum up to 1 inch, 1/2 inch, then lap it together to sum up to 1 inch. After cutting, I pressed. I have notched my sewing allowance right there to show where I'll be sewing. The next step is to mark the curve. From the center fold, I marked 5 inches and I went up 4 inches, just like so. So this is where my curve will be. For the bias tape, to create the curves, I placed the 1/2 inch bias tape close to the sewing allowance. That's the sleeve you have to place the bias tape at the back of the sleeve, just like what I'm doing here. So if you're following, you just have to pay close attention to these steps. It's not that complicated. So I just went up on the point 1/2 inch because I don't want too much. I don't want to create any design on the curve, so I just created enough to be able to fold the tape. So you just place it not covering the points that I made there. You can really line so you know where the line, so you just put it at the side of the line, not on the line, just like so. You pin and you sew. So what I did was to leave 1/4 of an inch and lock my stitches. The other one too, I did the same thing, sewed up and stopped 1/4 of an inch before the 4-inch point. So the next step was to cut a straight line up to the 4-inch, but leaving 1/2 an inch, and cut like a triangle, like creating a triangle close to the stitch close to the stitch, just really close to the stitch, not on the stitch, just close to the stitch, in such a way that you can be able to turn the bias tape to the other side freely. You can trim the excess, or you can just tuck it in like what I'm doing here, and so to make it thick. I hope I mentioned that my daughter is here. Yeah, she's just trying to ruin my record. After lapping well and I'm satisfied with the way it looks, I stitched on the edge, close to the edge. I did the same thing for the second one. Like I said, you can trim the excess or you can just sew right on the edge. Next step was to fold the top there, just like so. I just tucked it in, and so like I said, I don't want any design, so I just left like half an inch allowance there and tuck it in pretty good. And so you watch the way I sew. For the band, I just folded that at the back, facing the back, then sewed the side, half inch sewing allowance, trimmed and turned it over to the other side. So the next step was to create the pleat, because like I said, she wanted like a big sleeve, so there was enough pleat to be created. So I created the pleats, 3 pleats. Ensure that it does not exceed the wrist length, because the band is the same as the wrist. After creating my pleats, I sewed the sides of the sleeves. I trimmed the excess. It's time to attach the band to the sleeve. So you just watch what I did. After sewing the first part, you tuck in the second part just like so, and you sew on the edge. Once I'm done with attaching the band, I attached my sleeve, and this is all there is to sewing a crop top shirt. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe and like my video. Bye.